Beautiful. So, welcome, Collette, to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I feel like there's so much that I could say about what you do and how you show up in the world. I have a little bit of a background about your profession, but I would love to hear from you. If you could tell us what is it that you do, what is your profession, but also what is your genuine, authentic calling, that juiciness that calls you forward.
What calls me forward? It's my experiences of life. That's what's called me forward. And because I've been, as people would put it, through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
I have an empathy for a lot of people, and can understand where they're coming from with their stories as well. And so then I can then relate to them and then pass on my wisdom on how I've overcome what I've gone through. And yeah, I'm a bit of a very tough cookie as well. So and I think that's again just because of how I grew up initially. And so I did come from a poor background. Like I can remember having a pot on the stove for at least 5 days, and we'd just be topping it up with potatoes and sucking bones, and would have to go to creeks and get watercress or go to the ocean and get seafood, and that would be our supermarket. Wow. So yeah, we wouldn't go to the supermarket. Yes, and so that was what my father taught me that. And so I also grew up in the vineyard when he worked there, and actually I was telling someone just the other day that I would be sitting on the back of the tractor with Roundup spraying all over me.
Wow.
And but just because of the healthy lifestyle I lived, I was obviously able to detox that out of my system because we did grow up very, very healthy. And so then the other profession my dad had was a sea urchin diver. So we did go to the beach quite a lot, and he would get me to back the boat trailer in, and he would just drive the boat up, and that would be at 12. I'd be doing that. And then we would be even processing sea urchins in our garage, and like straight after Dad would get back, and we'd be processing, like I can remember 11 o'clock at night, and I remember like I'd be 15 and thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to go to bed. I still got homework to do, but it had to be done because it had to be in the freezers to be sent to Japan, basically, is where it would be exported.
Wow.
But even my mother, she was a nurse during my childhood. She's been a nurse predominantly most of my life, and she would do a lot of night shift and predominantly work night shift. So she wasn't home at night, and then most of the day she would be asleep. And so I would help my mum out, like doing a lot of the housework as much I could and look after my siblings. And so yeah, just I learned. I grew up very, very young and had to take care of myself very independently. So that taught me a lot. Also, growing up Jehovah's Witness, I had no birthdays or Christmas either.
Wow.
So that was quite a challenge for me as well, having that. But I rebelled at 12.
Wow.
And yes, again, very headstrong. I can remember going to one of our book meetings, and I'd just be like this. So very stubborn young individual, and very headstrong, and I've predominantly been like that. And so basically about 8 years ago, I had a near-death accident where doctors let me bleed internally for 4 or 5 days before I had to nearly bleed to death. And I had to have about 8-9 hours where I was actually awake during that, fighting for my life.
Oh.
And it was very, very distressing that time. But then after that, they stabilized me for a short period and said, Collette, we need to take you into surgery. And it was like, well, I haven't got any more fight in me, so I guess you're going to have to take me because there's nothing left in me. So I did. I fought for my life. I fought for my breath. I fought for my heart to beat. So going through that experience, and even so I was went through a 16-hour surgery and put on life support. And when I awoke, and in that surgery, they nicked my aorta and my lung collapsed.
Oh,
so like even then they managed to botch it up a little bit more. And it also took them 18 months to discover my brain injuries. So I went
that
through,
experience.
yeah, that was a bit of hell, as well as going through insurance claim as well. And then, so for about 2.5 years, I was treated as a victim and treated like shit by insurance people, where I was told by one doctor, "Oh, you're the mad motorbike woman." And then he goes, "Oh, I guess I shouldn't be saying that." And I just wanted to punch him in the face.
Wow. Okay.
Or I'd be told to shut up. Or I'd be incensed and they wouldn't even look at me.
Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah, you deal with a lot of healthcare people now, right? I read that. Yeah.
I don't take any rubbish. But also in my early 20s, just prior to having my daughters, I went through a bit of a detox as well. And I got rid of a lot of chemicals out of my life. I had a lot of eczema that would come up, and I had a lot of hay fever. And so I would sneeze and sneeze. Like I can remember it quite common, like people would say, "Bless you," after 3. I said, "I've got at least another 7 to go."
Hold your blessings.
Yes. And I would so then I went through a bit of a health, then this when I really started kicking into my health phase and into natural medicine. And so I studied to be an aromatherapist at that stage, but I also studied 5 other massage modalities, lymphatic massage and Reiki and Swedish and Shiatsu and Reiki and what's the other one? Another couple of others anyway.
Sure.
So I really got into quite a bit of a health kick then.
Wow, that's
and actually even now I can actually feel my energy really increase. So I thought I'd just share with you, like even right now I've got a bit of sweat on my lip right here.
Yeah.
And so understanding now, because I'm also call myself a bit of an energetic worker as well. So understanding when I've got sweat coming up here, I know my heart chakra is really going off at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's because of what's happening here. And I know that's what's going on. But after I had the accident, 3 months after I had that, I all of a sudden, so I wasn't hit straight away. It took me 3 months for it to punch me in the face. I got PTSD. So I do have delays in my reactions. And like even when I've had come across accidents, it won't hit me that in that time. It might take a day or two for what hit me. And so now I do allow space. If anything a little bit upsetting happens to me, I have to allow that space, not straight away, but a day or two later.
Interesting.
Because so some of us have that fight or flight. But I also discovered there's that freeze as well. So when I got PTSD 3 months after the accident, I all of a sudden was saying things. I want to be dead. Why can't I be dead? This is shit. I don't want to be here. Why am I going through this? And I was very angry, very, very angry. And people would look at me like, "No, Collette, no." And it's like, "Well, you're not going through that kind of thing." And so I can actually remember saying that at work, and people were just kind of horrified. Because previously I was this very energetic and happy person, and people would say, "Collette, what are you on?" Because they thought I'd be on drugs. And I go, "No, want some?" And I'd just be like,
full of energy, full of life. Yes.
Full of energy. Well, yeah. So this was another thing that happened again. It took about another 4 years for this to be diagnosed. I got diagnosed with bipolar.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that was only picked up because the a psychologist I had to help me with the PTSD, she noticed that there was something going on with me. And so basically the PTSD exacerbated the bipolar. So once I then understood what bipolar was, I then was able to manage my bipolar a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's so much here that I want to dissect. First, thank you so much for sharing just a small part of your journey. It sounds like it's been quite a ride for you. And I want to honor you so much for the way that you show up in the world and the things that you do and the capacity that you hold. But I wanted to kind of dissect some of that a little bit, whether it's the PTSD or the bipolar, whatever you would like to kind of bring and explain maybe a little bit more about to our listeners that maybe don't know about bipolar. Definitely, I'm sure a lot of people don't know about managing bipolar on your own, because I think most people know you're diagnosed, you take the medication, and you do what you're told kind of situation, right? And so I would love to know more about that. I would love to know more about how Collette deals with bipolar.
Well, it was, again, this is how my world's become very spiritual. And so, and that again happened 9 months after I had the accident. My brother passed away. So he's also included in my story. And so I became a bit of a psychic medium with all of that as well. And so I've had a lot of what I call spiritual guidings from my spiritual guides. And, but yes, with the bipolar, I had, again, things just appear for me. So 2 weeks after I was diagnosed with bipolar, I go into an entrepreneur meeting. So nothing to do with health, entrepreneur business. And I'm looking up at the guy, and he's a relationship coach, and he's the guest speaker for that day. And he starts off saying, I don't know why I'm here, but here I am. And then all of a sudden he starts discussing bipolar.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. And so then he gives me insights. And so he says, no, and so this is appropriate for me. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for everyone. So with my bipolar, he enlightened me that was from not bonding with my mother.
Okay.
Yes, which
we're going straight into the meat and potatoes. Let's do this.
Oh, yes.
Let's go.
So not bonding with my mother, and that it's caused from ancestral trauma or quantum epigenetics, which I also had discovered because I'd been following Joe Dempsey, which was a quantum scientist as well. So because I understood his work, I understood exactly what Michael was the presenter's name was talking about.
Do you mind dialing it back just a second, just to explain it a little bit for the audience that don't know what it means? I'm dabbling in it. I know that I've had streams of consciousness about it. And this is the synchronicity that I talk about all the time for anybody that's listening right now. I always say I love my life and the work that I'm doing because life has become so synchronistic. It's always the right people. It's always the right time. I'm so grateful for you, Collette. So can you tell us a little bit about quantum genetics?
Of course. If you don't mind, I'm just going to go and sit on the grass for
Absolutely.
a little bit.
Please take your time.
So, quantum epigenetics or ancestral trauma is another way people also call it as well. Oh my gosh, where have you gone? Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
So, it goes back 7 generations is what happens. And so it says it's in the blood. So how you can also, and again, it's not for all health things, or so for instance, even things like alcoholism, sexual abuse can be quite part of quantum epigenetics. And so it's basically set from a trauma caused by going back 7 generations ago. And so when I dabbled into that, and so that's basically the crux of it. It's going into your dreams where there's something that's happened in your family, and there's something in the blood, and then energetically, this is what happens to attract it and affect you in your life. And then it's up to then, so what I say happens is then your family ends up having life lessons about that.
Reliving,
and so it can,
rebring.
Yes. And that's where you can have sexual abuse run in families, which I did on my father's side. And then I also have alcoholism run on both sides of my family as well. And so then you can have alcohol abuse on both sides. So my brother actually passed away coming off alcohol. Yeah. So my grandmother was also an alcoholic as well. My mother was malnourished and wasn't cared for enough, and she was put into a home. So there wasn't bonding there. I also had a great aunt who she had 3 families, and 2 lots of her children she abandoned in the orphanage. So this is how I say, like, you may not sometimes be aware of the deeper things that are going on in your blood and in your family. And so for me, going into the deeper understanding, which I am quite a deep person, has helped me really understand and accept what's occurred and why it's happened, and how I'm over. But then it's easier to then overcome that. It's not something. It's for me to learn. It's a life lesson.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And the way that exactly I hold things, and the way that I share with my clients and I support people, is to see that life is the coach, is that actually what happens in your world is just reflecting what's internally and what's ready to heal. And so to me, when these things come up for us, I see this ancestral pattern and trauma if you know about your history. But if you don't, sometimes it comes out of nowhere and you think, I don't know any stories about anything like this in my family, but because it's coming up for you. You can trust that life is the teacher and it's inviting you.
Correct. Well, part of life coaching, when we start off in one session, it's like, so when did it occur? Is it like during childhood, before birth, after birth, or before birth? So going in, is it like, is it this past life? Is it? And so then it does leave options for more information to come up. And this is where having to have more healing and around that, I was able to tap into that as well and get the help that I needed. But I was also fortunate. My sister is Mormon, and she did a lot of genealogy, and I was able to go back only to the 6th generation. But fortunately, I also learned about past life transgressions and was able to tap into the 7th.
Wow. Through your past life. So you're coming back now 7 generations later.
Yes. And so then I was able to understand what happened in our family in regards to the mother's line and bipolar.
Okay. And so was it through that understanding that you found healing, or what was it that supported you in actually, what? I'm sure there's a lot there. I'm sure it's a loaded question.
Well, the other support, like I went up to Michael, the guy who first told me about bipolar, and after the session, I went up to him and I thanked him. I said, "Thank you, Michael, so much. I've just been diagnosed with bipolar." And he then proceeded to me, "Well, Collette, there's also something else that can assist you as well." And he recommended having hot baths, 30 to 40 minutes long at least, regularly, at least 3 to 4 times a week. And so when I know I'm emotionally not right, I will have those baths. And then I got told, guided, that it was basically because it's putting you back into the womb. It's a womb kind of environment and a healing environment for your soul, basically, to heal that. So having the healing baths was part of the support system for myself.
Mm.
The other thing with the bipolar was also managing it. So previously I would allow myself to be on these
Mhm.
highs. And I could be on these highs for days, but then, and people would see the highs, but I wouldn't allow them to see the lows where I'd be crying.
Yeah.
And I would be hiding my lows and I wouldn't cry. And I even remember finally, like it was probably only about 6 months after I got diagnosed with bipolar, and I was crying, and my daughter asked, "What's the matter, Mum?" I go, "It's okay. It's just my bipolar."
Yeah.
And it was just like, but she thought, "What's the matter? What's wrong, Mum?" I was like, "No, it's just my bipolar, daughter."
Yeah. Yeah.
And just showing her, just allowing myself to show her, my body, my soul's sad at this point.
Yes.
And so, but allowing it,
Allowing
and
that.
that it was, okay, because it was okay to show all the highs.
Yes.
But then, for some reason, society doesn't like to see us in our lows,
Yes.
and that's not acceptable. It's where finally I allowed myself and accepted it. It's okay. I'm just sad.
Yeah.
I'm all right.
And tears are so healing in so many cultures. That's part of actually healing ourselves, is going through the tears and going through that cleansing. It's like taking a bath. It's an energetic cleansing that
Yes.
happens when we have tears. So it's so interesting that you say the highs and the lows. And so the way that I kind of have explained bipolar in the past, it's funny, I used to teach med psych in medical school. It was probably my worst subject going through as a student and on my exams. But then when I went back to teach it, because I have a very different energetic understanding of it now, when I taught it was quite different, even seeing, schizophrenia very differently, looking at the light spectrum that we can usually perceive as humans and thinking maybe they can just perceive a little more, or looking at the sound spectrum that most of us can hear, maybe they can just hear a little more. And so, yeah, when I presented it like that to my students, a few of them who had been diagnosed came to me later and they said, "Thank you for normalizing that there's nothing wrong with me." And to me, that was everything. There is nothing wrong with any of us.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, I think, in mental health, to support people, to be supported, because there's so much of an issue with diagnosis. There's so much rejection. There's so much disconnection from who we are and how it's actually a gift. And so I just love and appreciate and honor you so much for the way that you hold it as this gift of a roller coaster you get to be high on. And you also get to be low, and you come back down, and you get to hold space for yourself. That acceptance is everything.
Well, that's where I would also implement other things. So I also got myself a ZX6R, a really fast motorbike.
Yeah.
And when I need to pick myself up, I also will get on that.
As someone who used to have a motorcycle, so my mom went paranoid when I got it. I sold it a few months later because I didn't want her to have continual health issues, but we are such spirit tribes. So thank God that you're living it. And I'm still in this space of, I still want to get my motorcycle. So yes to all of it. So yeah, you self-medicate with the thrill is what I'm hearing.
Well, yes, if I need to. If I also need to just mellow and calm myself down, it's then back to nature. It's walking on the beach. It's having a swim in the ocean. It's walking in the forest.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's
Beautiful.
sitting by the river and
Yeah.
appreciating. And that really rebalances. So when I reground myself, so basically, because what you can find is with bipolar, you can end up a lot in the head as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so grounding can really bring you back to earth and get you out of your head.
Okay. Yeah.
And so grounding and connecting to the ground, another reason why I thought, no, let me come back to the ground.
Yes.
Because not enough of us connect again to the ground.
Yeah.
And when we connect to this planet that we live on.
Yes. To our human
Um,
experience, to the connectedness of
yes,
all of this.
yes.
Yes, yes.
And so I learned also, I can't even remember, was it Reiki? It was through another meditation where, chakra. It was basically
Mm,
through chakra balancing.
mm.
So I learned that our feet were actually ground point, or what they call basement. And then we can have our root chakra and going up to our crown chakra. And so I learned, even with manifesting things into our life, I got told to think about what I want and look down at my feet to bring it into reality.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, energetically, that makes perfect sense.
Energetically. And again, so that's why I also call myself a very energetic
Yeah.
worker as well, because understanding things, even words energetically, have such a power.
Oof,
And
yes.
so if I do also hear people speaking negatively, I like to reframe it for them. How else can we say that? Or I'll just come out and flip it to a positive.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, it's so
Mm.
powerful. Our words are so powerful. And so you mentioned something about coming back to earth. And so I tend to talk a lot about energies and the masculine and the feminine, or the doing and the being. And so just today I was talking about on a live how to bring yourself back into that feminine, because in our world right now where we're at, we're so overdoing the masculine, and to a point where it's a lot of it is the toxic masculine, the toxic doing, the overdoing, the pushing, the, aggressiveness now, and we're fighting each other and we're in competition in relationships, and that's so toxic. And so what would you say are like maybe the top 3 or the top 5 ways that you would recommend for someone maybe who's not as aware, or maybe who's not as intuitive? So I had someone come to me today and say, you know what, I talked to this intuitive person, and they told me everything. They were probably 99% right. How did they do that? And I said, oh, that's interesting. I'm intuitive when I coach my clients, right? And so I kind of explained the things that I've personally done to get me closer to my intuition and it's my channeling, right? And so I'm just curious, for people who maybe are not quite there, is there something that they can do first to bring themselves closer to that? Because I believe, in what I've read and what I know, is our intuition comes through our being, through that feminine energy and that connectedness, as you said, to the ground and to our presence here on this earth, and to also our spiritual interconnectedness. And so, yeah, I'm just curious, what would you share about that?
Well, even just saying that. So the earth is the feminine.
Yes.
So connecting to the ground, to nature, the feminine.
Yes.
So if we do not connect to her, our wonderful planet,
Yeah.
if we keep getting stuck in our houses or buildings, and don't get out to nature and appreciate her and be grateful for her, that's the first thing. Appreciate our beautiful planet.
Yes.
So just really, just being in awe of, like, I'm I'm very connected to nature, because I'll just have animals come up to me and just appear.
Yeah. The spirit
and
guides.
yes, very much so. And so even actually with the accident, it was funny because the psychologist said to me the accident made me own my femininity.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Well, the year prior, before the accident, just over a year, I had a number 4 haircut. I'd shaved my head.
Ah.
And now I have like my hair like halfway down the back nearly. So I also worked in a very masculine corporate role as
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
in a printing factory. And so I didn't very often tap into my feminine there. I also was a scout leader, and because my daughters did scouts. And so I was off and doing things I still wanted in the environment. But again, I was in the scouts, a very masculine. role. And I can even remember, like, people say, "Where's your leader?" And I go, "Here I am." And because, like, I looked like just one of the kids sometimes, but because, again, in the uniform, it was a very masculine role.
Yes.
And so the accident stopped all that. I stopped working. So part of the thing was with the brain injury was I had to leave that environment. I got told to leave that job and to move. I had to move to another area. And it was in that transition. So yes, it was in that transition of really starting to discover myself and my passions. So I had my accident was on a motorbike, and I actually did have the surgeon say to me, "Collette," and they made me promise, "You're not to get back on a motorbike." And they made me promise, because I said, "You're for real, aren't you?" And so, like, motorbikes can be quite masculine, and but I still use it as a way of getting that need out. And that's also part of the bipolar. Part of the bipolar is sometimes the need for thrills.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's another part of bipolar, which feeds that as well, but able to manage it in a safe way. And understand. Yeah.
Interesting. So I heard you talk about the energetic swings. I'm wondering if it has anything to do with masculine and feminine energy, or is that just a high and low frequency energy? How do you understand it and hold it?
Well, that again is balancing it. So I at times will go through a masculine stage where I'll put my masculine boots on and I'm bossy. Bossy as, because at stages we need to be in that frame of mind.
Totally.
We need to be bossing up at times. But then also, I love to get into my feminine, and I love dressing up in a beautiful dress, and I get to attempt. I still struggle with doing my hair, but no, okay, let me have a go at doing my hair today and see what happens. And I think, oh, and I'm going to paint my nails today, and yeah, put some makeup on. Let me be a girl. And so I did. I had a few more goes. I had my eyebrows done, and then I had a go at eyelash extensions. And so then. But another great way, which really helps me get into the feminine, is dancing. Dancing is a perfect way to get into the feminine.
Yes. Moving the body to the rhythm. Yes. Allowing it to just flow. Yes. No control. Yes. Love that.
So music is the perfect way to allow the feminine to just ooze out.
Yes, to trust the being. Yeah, I love that. So juicy.
Yeah, so that's my favorite way of getting into the feminine.
Yeah. It's so funny because I find myself when I go to the gym, I put my music on, and a lot of times it's this music that makes my body want to move. And so I'm running on the treadmill in this like masculine overdrive, and then I slow down and I'm kind of just walking, and like people probably think I'm not quite 100% because I'm going back and forth between that masculine and feminine constantly. It feels so good. That to me is health. Like that to me is vitality, and it feels so good. So I love that you're mentioning that music and that flow and that just trusting what comes through the body. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Well, that was also another big part of my healing. So after I came off life support, and I think it was just recently I discovered self-video healing hurts. And so I started playing Healing DNA 528.
Okay, tell me about that.
And I was out of hospital after I nearly died in 10 days. And the surgeons were like scratching their head, and I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
And and they didn't know how I was getting out. And
Was
this,
this
yeah,
with,
Collette, you can
sorry to
go
interrupt, was this with binaural beats or how did you do that?
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
binaural
Yeah.
beats,
Love it.
yes.
Yeah.
And so that has a major hit. So I do listen, sometimes I go through stages where I need to listen to some hertz or binaural beats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also that's where I also learned it from Joe Dempasar as well,
Mm-hmm.
with his quantum science,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding, again, healing tones, energy. Again, like they've proven, like even just say with water, if you speak horrible to water
Yeah.
and you put it on plants, it's not going to do very well. But if you
Yeah.
speak beautifully or play beautiful music, the effects it can have, because of course we're made of water as well.
Exactly.
So having the right music playing to heal us and look after us, can give us the conducive environment for our well-being.
Yes, I love that. Oh, I love that so much. And so how about meditating on your water without actually speaking it, but really when you set an intention, for example, on your water, it's all energy.
Of course.
Yeah.
And again, so I've just actually, because I was listening to a reading the other day and it talked about humming. And because I will hum sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
when you hum, it reverberates within, you're reverberating. And he mentioned just humming in your head. And so that made me think about, well, yes, if you sing in harmony, you could sing in one hum in your head, another hum physically, and then you've got a different harmony going on with yourself, which then creates a really beautiful environment for your body and your mind and soul.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. That actually takes me back to a healing experience that I had. And it was through plant medicine. And I found myself, because I didn't know a lot of the words, it was my first time. And I just hummed and I felt like I was contributing to the collective healing just by what came through and that humming. And it was so energetically calming and grounding and holding space for others and also healing me at the same time. So it was such a powerful experience. So you saying that just confirms what I experienced in that moment, how powerful that is.
Interesting, because I did ayahuasca as well. I traveled to Peru, and the shamans there, they had different instruments, and so I recognized when, for instance, when they played the leopard, when they would pound on the leopard drum, it would take away my energy, and it would just, it hurt me. But as soon as they would play the flute, it would soothe me so contentedly. And so then I recognized also, like, sometimes the gong would go, that had this big massive gong as well, and sometimes the effects of that. So this is where I'm meaning, and same thing with, like, they can say energetically with certain energy towers, pylon towers, electrical towers, that can give off bad energy and give cancer. If they're for a predominantly long time. So it's just like anything, if you've got the right energy and the healing tones, because sometimes, like for instance, dogs can hear certain things, but we can't.
Yeah.
And so energetically, it's going on without us going on. So even understanding them, where we live, can have a big impact on our well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's oh, there's so much juiciness in this conversation. I feel like we could talk forever. If you could give a gift to the audience that's listening here, what would you say one thing that they could do to balance, ground, really come into their authentic alignment? I know, again, that's a loaded question, but streaming consciousness and trusting what comes through, what would be that gift from you that you would like to offer?
The first thing that just comes to mind is really just conscious breathing. Once you take note of your conscious breath, because it's so unconscious to us most of the time, predominantly, it allows us to become in the present, which
I
is
love
a
that.
gift to ourselves. And so when we give ourselves that gift, that present, that time for ourselves, that self-love, self-care. And when we give ourselves that self-care, we then begin to give ourselves that self-worth. And when we then also give ourselves self-respect and implement boundaries that stop others from any toxic behavior, this don't allow any others in, and implement our boundaries and give ourselves self-respect, we then, this is when we attain the self-worth and the self-confidence. So it comes back to self. And so breathing, giving us that present, because it will come to mind what we need.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yes. We all know within ourselves what our truth is if we can come back to ourselves. Yes. Beautiful. Oh, thank you. You are such a gift, and I would love to connect with you again and continue this stream of co-creation and this beautiful consciousness. I was so beautiful to be with you today, to learn a little bit about you. Are you offering any kind of work for people? How can they get in touch with you? Is there social media, email, anything that you'd like to share?
Of course, they can connect with me on my email is Collette Avery 71 at hotmail.com. Email me there. And I am on Facebook, Collette Avery, and Collette Avery 71 on Instagram.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And I'll post that in the show notes as well in case anyone wants to reach out. And is there something that you offer in terms of your career, any kind of, whether it's courses or just therapy? I know you said massage. I know you said there's so many things. You're also psychic medium, spiritual mentor, energetic worker. What would you like to invite our audience if they feel called to connect with you for?
Well, I'm a life coach.
Beautiful.
So, and I specialize in trauma.
Okay, beautiful.
So then energetically, I just go from there because each individual is very specific on, especially on the amount of different traumas I cover. So it's very different for each individual because some of it doesn't delve into ancestral trauma. Some of it delves into other areas. So even it's like relationship coaching delves into, even though you can have still ancestral trauma there. So yeah, there's and normally I incorporate everything I know when I go into these sessions with clients as well.
Okay. So I do talk a lot with my audience about trauma, ancestral, whether it's deep, like big T trauma, whatever it is that they've gone through. And a lot of, in coaching, we're very trauma informed. And so I always say, for traumas that require a specialist, you have to go to a trauma specialist, coach or therapist or whatever it might be. So I love that this is what you do. I'm definitely adding you to my list of resources. And up to health, I'm building this wealth of connectedness of people who are spiritually guided, people who really hold the true range of healing, because I studied medicine in the Western medicine world, and I came back into the world recognizing that I'm an educator more than a prescription healer, and I'm an energetic healer and a spirit mom more than I am, willing to kind of work in that clinical realm. And so bringing coaching back into healthcare is one of my callings, but really creating this network of humans who are here to heal in a wider range. So I'm just so grateful. And if you're open to it, I would love to add you to the resources there. It's something that I'm just starting to build, but I hear that calling is so strong that it's happening. So yeah.
Namaste.
Thank you. Oh, you're such a gift. So beautiful to connect with you. Thank you for your love. Thank you for showing up in the world. Thank you for everything that you came here to go through. so that you can hold space for others. I really hear that you've been through it, and I see the way you hold it, and I honor you so much for coming back. Father God, Mother Earth. That's how I always say it. And I just love that, all the confirmations, all the beauty in this conversation. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you. I will.